What is really good, everybody? Welcome back to the End Goal Podcast. Today is kind of an interesting one. I don't know how often I actually say that. And if I say that too often, you let me know. But today I wanted to break down an essay that came out a couple of months ago that I couldn't read or listen to the podcast about. So, a couple of months ago, maybe a month and a half ago right now or so, George Mack released an essay about over high agency. And, as much as I'm not a productivity bro anymore, I still really fuck with some of the themes around it. So I was really intrigued by the high agency essay. And then he came out with the podcast with Chris Williamson. I obviously couldn't listen to it, but I got my therapist to agree to let me listen to one podcast. And I was like, I want to listen to this one because I want to make a video over it. She was like, okay. I was like, yes. So I listened to it Monday morning. Best morning I've had in a while. Listened to the podcast, mobilized, did chores, went on a 1 hour walk, took notes over everything. It was great. It was honestly so good. It was so fucking good. I loved it. And then this morning I did the exact opposite of that, where I sat in bed quite literally until 9:30 a.m. It was kind of gross. So as you can see, we're living on both ends of the spectrum here. Amazing and bleh. Those are the two ends of the spectrum. If anybody asks you what the productivity spectrum is, it's amazing is on one side and bleh is on the other side. And then we just all move between the rest. That's essentially what happens. So the high agency essay is basically George Mack's findings, thoughts, and ruminations over the concept of what is high agency. How do we achieve it? How do we avoid low agency? What are some pitfalls that occur with low agency? How can we view high agency in our everyday life? Things like that, right? So this, once again, it just intrigued me. It literally has nothing to do with, anything that I do right now. It's just the concept intrigued me. And so now we're talking about it, and we'll talk about it as long as I can talk about it. So initially I read through the essay first, which is it's online, it's on the website highagency.com. It takes like 30 minutes max to really get through. And I like the podcast because he breaks down in a little bit more detail of the things that he says in the essay. So you get a little bit more like thoughts around some of the things that he says here, because in the essay they're all concise, they're to the point. He's trying to write a piece. In the podcast he's just talking, which I appreciate that a lot more. So let's get into it, right? So what is high agency? If you're wondering what is high agency, and the way George Mack described it was like, I know it when I see it, which he got from the response of a different person back in the day who was asked, how do you define pornography? And Supreme Court Judge Justice Potter Stewart was asked to define pornography, and he said, I know it when I see it. And he was like, that's basically what high agency is. And essentially, anything you see in front of you right now is a product of high agency. The fact that I can make something on a camera through a microphone and you can see it when I'm sitting in Pennsylvania and you're sitting in wherever you are, that's high agency. That is somebody took control of life and said, I'm going to do something. That's essentially what high agency is. And the way I like to say is high agency is taking control of life. The way George Mack puts it is you have two types of people, right? Or not two types of people, but there's a spectrum, right? There's a spectrum of, on one end, you have life is happening to you. And on the other end is you are happening to life, which essentially means like you're just letting things happen in your life. And the other side, you're taking control and doing things of your own volition, voluntarily, etc. So I really enjoy that concept. It's very similar to the idea of when somebody kind of, at some point we all get that revelation where we think, oh, wow, I'm actually the main character of my own life. I'm not only a side character in somebody else's life. I'm the main character of my own life. I have my own thoughts. I have my own actions. My life does not have to be this way, the way it is. I can change it. I can do things better. I can do things worse. I have control, etc. There's a word for that. And I don't recall what the word is right now, but we're going to ask our good friend Google what that word is. What is the word for when you think you're the main character of your life? Main character syndrome. Oh, well, this is a little bit different. Its definition is main character syndrome, where it's basically saying you think you're the main character of your life, therefore you think all of your life's events are of most importance to others, etc. All these things. It describes a series of self-centered behaviors. I don't think it's self-centered to put yourself first anymore, okay? I think we need to stop that. I think we need to stop deeming being self-centered as a bad thing, okay? If you're taking control of your life and trying to be a better person, but you have to prioritize yourself over others, that's fine. Anyways, we're getting off topic, which is fine. It's my fucking podcast. High agency. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And the idea is that anything that you see is a product of high agency. The buildings that you see, the bed that you're sleeping in, the phone that you're looking at, the AirPods that you're listening through, the car that you drive, the train that you drive on, the flight that you take to go somewhere else, the bike that you're riding, the shoes that you're wearing, literally the clothes that you're wearing are a product of high agency. The heating unit in your system, in your apartment or wherever you're living, the AC unit, those are all products of high agency. And so he poses at the beginning of his essay an interesting question that I still don't really have an answer to. But he basically says, if you were stuck in a prison cell and you had one call, who would you call to get you out of there? And the idea is for you, it basically begs the question, like, who in your life is of the most high agency that you can call to get you out of the situation? Think about that question. Who would you call? I don't know who I would call besides my father, because I don't know anybody in my life who is as high agency as my father. But I feel like that's a cop out answer, but that's just my answer. That's the first thing that came to my head. So who would you call? And then after I read the entire 30 minutes of high agency, I took a couple of notes over, but not too many. I was going to listen to the podcast to see, like, what did he explain differently than what I thought, about any of the concepts. We basically the same. It's very easy essay. It's very simple. It's just to get you thinking, not to like make you feel right or wrong. And most of the memes that he had in his essay are ones that he showed in the podcast. Anyway, so I'm going to skip over a lot of that stuff. If you want to go listen to the podcast, you can. It's with Chris Williams, and it came out like roughly 2 months ago now. But there's a couple of things that occurred to me while we were talking, right? And they kind of alluded to these things on the podcast as well. So when you have the concept of high agency versus low agency, you think low agency is life is just happening to you. That's it. Like, you don't do anything and life is just happening to you. And they talked about how the education system is an input into low agency. And I love this. I absolutely love this. And this is why, right? I've said this multiple times before, that I'm a product of the education system, the American education system. I went to school, I got good grades, I got into college. My parents didn't have to take out debt for it. I got good grades in college. I got my master's degree. I got my CPA. I landed an internship. I landed a job. I'm still at that job. I hate my life. So I did everything I was supposed to do. And I'm very unsatisfied. So but the thing is that going through the education system, and I always think back to my education system, my education, my upbringing, etc. And it really annoys me that there's so many things that I have to learn right now in my 20s after getting out of the education system and having a real job and living on my own and all these things, or things that I have to unlearn right now that I learned previously. whether it's the concept of rote memorization, whether it's the concept of like asking permission, whether it's the concept of waiting your turn, whether it's the concept of um, like you have to take an exam, you have to like make good grades, you have to do all these things, right? You have to um, honestly raise your hand. I don't know if I said this previously, but like raise your hands to ask questions, like all those things, right? Don't ask too many questions. You're taking up too much time. Learn this faster. Learn this the way that I'm teaching it to you. All these things, right? And it basically makes little clones of each other. It basically makes little human clones that just they basically built a pipeline of education system into workforce and don't ask any questions. Just do what you're told. Go do your work, get money, spend money, and just continue that cycle. Don't worry about anything else. Don't ask questions. Try and vote. It's not going to matter, but try and vote. Like that's what it feels like, and that's what it felt like, right? And that's why I get really angry when I think about the education system and think about having to put my child through the education system in the future, because like let's just go back to a couple of the examples that I talked about right now, right? Rote memorization. Who the fuck has time to memorize anything anymore? We all write it down. We all put it on our calendar. If we don't know something, we look it up. Just because you know, we had closed book exams. We couldn't do open book, meaning you had to know it for the exam. You had to answer in a very specific way. If it wasn't specific, they would take points off. You couldn't use a calculator for certain things. Well, you're not going to have a calculator in real life. Bitch, I have my phone. I have Excel, whatever it is, right? Raise your hand before you have to go to the bathroom. Control your urges. If you have to, you're going to the bathroom too much. Sit down. No, you can't leave right now. Raise your hand before you ask a question. You're asking too many questions. If you don't understand it, see me after class. Like, I don't understand this. Can you help me? Sorry. Here's some more homework. Here's all this homework to do at home because I can't teach you everything in 45 minutes. And it just really, I feel like it actually stunts mental growth when you're boxing in, limiting, and restricting children, humans, when their brains are in the most developmental state, you are stunting that development by putting all these restrictions on them. And I 100% believe it's like that you're creating low agency people. You're creating people who just do what they're told and don't think outside the box. They don't think for themselves. They don't think, what do I want? How do I want to learn this? What am I actually interested in? Tommy got that, understood that in 10 minutes. It's taking me 40 minutes. That means I'm a problem. I'm the problem because it's taking me 4 times the time to learn something that Tommy's learning 4 times as quickly. And it's not a problem. I was talking to my wife about this, about, how much do we want to push our kids into getting a degree and getting all that stuff, and like graduating high school, graduating college, and all that stuff, right? And I think back to some of the greatest minds, like some of the greatest original thinkers of our times, and a good amount of them just figured out life without having to have a degree and all these things, right? They just started figuring out life sooner. They spent those 4 years that somebody would have spent in college figuring out life. Kind of got a head start that way. And I think, like, what would I want for a child now? I would want them to figure out life at their own pace, but like actual life. I don't want them to have to sit in school for 8 hours, only eat between the times of 12 and 12:30, only eat once during that time, have a very limited breakfast because it's so early in the morning. They come back at 5 p.m. and they don't get to enjoy time because they have to do 4 hours of homework. And like, I think about what's the best benefit there? Like, how do How can I help them think originally, think for themselves? You know, I don't want to give them all the answers, but I want them to be able to find the answers as they need it. There is something to say about, and I don't know how legitimate these statistics are. I have to dig deeper. But people talking about this new generation that uses AI for everything, like they're just not, they don't know anything because they keep asking AI. And I think maybe there is a subset of people that just rely on tech and don't think for themselves, and there's people who use tech to think for themselves. And I think we should be gearing people into the realm of thinking for themselves using tech, like using AI to learn something, asking it the questions you want to ask it in order to understand it. Like, I don't understand this piece. Can you explain it to me? Okay, that was a bit too detailed. Can you dumb it down? Okay, can we move on to the next step now? I get this. Can we move on to the next step? Like taking it at your own pace and also having a massively quick feedback loop of like question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. It's not like, you know, you ask your instructor a question in front of everybody and they're like, oh, well, we can't get into that now. Let's get into it later. Fuck, well, I guess fuck me and I have to go figure it out myself, you know? Or it takes you like, you try and put it into Google and it takes you like 3 different articles to read through to kind of figure out what you're trying to understand, right? So I do think like right now, the standard education system is very low agency. It's very do what you're told, don't ask questions, don't really think for yourself. It has me a bit fearful, but I think we can get over it if we're cognizant and we're a bit more high agency about dealing with it from going forward. And it was really funny. They talked about this because George Mack posed the usual question of like, what is one of the most universally agreed upon things that nobody ever changes? And one of them was like the education system. Everybody's like, yeah, this thing has to change. This thing is not good. Oh my gosh, it hasn't changed at all. It hasn't changed. It's probably got worse, to be honest, but it hasn't changed at all. You know? So that was an interesting thing to kind of ponder on. And then he said, the behaviors that you were rewarded for in younger life are behaviors you're punished for in later life. Or flipping that, the behaviors that you're punished for in younger life are the behaviors you're rewarded for in later life. And that's basically going back to the education system thing of like asking too many questions, trying to understand, trying to do it your own way. You get punished for that in school, you know, but later in life, everybody likes the outlier. Like you have to fit in during school, but when you're out in the workforce with the billions of people, it's the outliers that get the attention and maybe are sometimes successful. More successful is because they're doing something that they want to do that's different from something that everybody else is doing. Does that make sense? This one was really funny. This one was really funny. This was really interesting. He said he played out the scenario of imagine you're judging a beauty contest not by who you think is the most beautiful, by who you think others will think is the most beautiful. And I think that speaks volumes to today's society, right? Because we're so caught up in what will other people think, or should I make the decision that I actually think is true, or should I make the decision that the collective thinks is true? Because, you know, what value does my individual decision have if it's not going to matter at the end? That's how people think, right? It's basically, it's also the same way. That's the same way of the voting system, right? Do I want to vote for this one, or do I want to vote for the one everybody else is voting for because me voting for the one that I want to vote for is going to win anyway, right? It's very interesting. But I think that the more that we can talk about this and the more that we can talk about the fact that it's a thing and people think like this, we can overcome it. But I thought that was funny. Judging a beauty contest not by who you think is the most beautiful, but by who you think others will think is the most beautiful. It's interesting. Then there is the low agency trap, right? There's a couple of traps when it comes to low agency. And me, personally, I fall into every single one of these traps. Every single one. And that was a hard pill to swallow. I was listening to these traps while walking on logs that were sitting on the sidewalk next to the park that I was walking by while I was on my walk yesterday listening to this podcast. And that was really fun just to walk across those logs. Didn't fall off of them though. I will say I did not fall off of them though. And I think you should be proud of me for that. I think you should be really proud that I did not fall off those logs and I held my balance the entire way through. It was like 8 different pieces of logs. I was proud of myself. So the low agency traps. The first one is the midwit who overthinks. And this is basically, if you think about when you have your probability spectrum and you have your like the low end on the left side, it goes up into like a big hump, and then the right end is also very low. I forget what that's called. Low and high something. This deviation? Is this standard deviation? Am I deviating from what we're talking about right now? Am I standardly deviating from what we're talking about right now? I don't know what it's called. So basically on the left-hand side, on the low end, is the idiot who just says, I'm just going to do it. On the right-hand side, it's the aggressively smart person who says, I'm just going to do it. And then in the middle, at the top of the big hump, is a person that says, so I'm going to go to university for 5 years. I'm going to get my consulting degree. And then I'm going to join this program. I'm going to join this internship for 1 year. I'm going to land a job here. And so within 3 years, I should have enough money, knowledge, and experience to then start on my own. You have spent 8 years waiting to start, setting up the perfect opportunity to start. And everybody else around you just said, I'm just going to start and see what happens. That's the pitfall that I fall into sometimes, or not sometimes, all the time, actually. I always wait to start until conditions are better, or that I think conditions are better. They're not actually better, but I think the conditions are better. I wait for, I wait to feel good to record. I wait to, make sure that I'm not feeling physically bleh to work out. I wait to, I wake up in the morning and think, am I feeling like I want to go walk? I don't just go walk. Am I feeling like I want to walk? And then I don't go walk. I wait to do chores. If I'm like, am I feeling like doing chores right now? Maybe I'll do it tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning comes. Maybe I'll do it Wednesday morning. Maybe I'll do it. Actually, I'm too busy Thursday. I think I'll do it Friday instead. By the time Saturday comes, you've done nothing. You literally haven't done it. Post that video. Send that email. Start that business. Demo that product. Call the supplier. Don't just look up suppliers, call them. Ask questions. And then after you get done calling, you think, oh, I should have asked them XYZ as well. Let me write those questions down so the next time I call them, I know what I want to ask. You would not have known to ask those additional questions unless you called the first time, because you waiting to call would not have made you think about those questions anymore. Right? It's only through the process of doing that we, close the feedback loop, that we kind of figure out, okay, here's what I missed. Here's what I want to make sure I don't miss next time. So these were the answers I got this time. Here's how I asked the question, and I got these answers. But I didn't like these answers. Is there a different way for me to ask the question to have more favorable answers, etc.? Right? Do the thing. Don't think about it too much, because if you think about it, you'll fall into the rumination trap, which is I'm still thinking about it. I'll call up friends and I'll be like, how are you doing? How's that thing you're working on? They're like, I'm still working on it. And I'm like, okay, cool. So when's it's like, when are you going to do it? Like, I'm still thinking about it. I'm still calling people. I'm still figuring things out. Okay. This is not the right time for bro. I'm still thinking about it. So like, when it's time for me to do it, I'll be ready. Sure. I'm sure you will be. Probably not. So you might as well just do it now. That's honestly how I think. That's honestly what I think about all these things. That's why it's so important for me to do things. I think right now, I'm still really bad with the thinking. Like right now, there's a couple of book reviews that I'm sitting on. There's a couple of video things that I need to get out this week that I told myself, yeah, I'll script for these first and then I'll record the video. And I've yet to script for them. Therefore, I have yet to record the video. And honestly, I could just record a video, not like it, have ideas, script it out, and then record a new one. It would be better. And I can do that more quickly than I would waiting to script, waiting to video, waiting to edit, etc. So the idea is just to do the thing, regardless of whether you're quote unquote ready or not. Even if you're still thinking about doing the thing, just do the thing. When I close down the Etsy shop, I'm still buying supplies and I'm still like thinking about design. Well, this is my problem. I'm still thinking about design concepts when I could just message the guy on Fiverr and just say, I need these 5 and I need these 5 designs, these 5 ways. Can you send me the mock-ups? Let's get started on this thing, right? And I could do that right now. I'm just not gonna have designs with me by like next week. Or I could tell myself I'm still thinking about it until next week and then not actually think about it. You know, don't fall into the low agency rumination trap of I'm still thinking about it. Because if you think too much, a lot of times your thinking gets a little bit muddy, gets a little bit vague, gets a little bit clouded because you're just thinking. Everything's in your brain. You haven't written it out. You haven't put it down on paper. You haven't talked it. You haven't said it to somebody, right? You fall into the low agency vague trap or the muddy thinking trap where it's like, well, I thought about it. I asked a couple of friends about it. They think it's not possible. I'm starting to think it's also not possible, but I'm still thinking about it. You haven't done a fucking thing. You have done not a net fucking thing, bro. You have done nothing. And so don't fall into these traps. And and you can tell, low agency is all about inaction. High agency is all about action. It's all about doing things. Thinking less about doing the thing and more of doing the thing in general. And so if you're trying to be more of a high agency person, if you're trying to get out of this trap of being living in low agency or towards that side of the spectrum, you just have to take more action. They said something about taking the time to think about things is time spent that could be otherwise spent doing the actual thing. And so like the example they used, which is a really, really good example, it was like, I spent 2 to 3 years trying to map out on a spreadsheet how much would I need to make in order to go nomadic, live in this city for this little bit amount of time, live in this city for this little bit amount of time, live in that city for this little bit amount of time. And let me write all the pros and cons down on a spreadsheet. Let me make sure I have all of these this cost benefit analysis done. And if you just packed up your bags and gone to those places just to live there and see how it feels, you could have actually lived in those places during those 2 to 3 years you spent just thinking about living in those places. Now, I'm not the best person to use travel as an example, obviously, but I'll be honest with you guys. I'll give you an example. This summer, I wanted to take like a couple of days. I'm in Pennsylvania right now. I wanted to fly back down to Texas. I wanted to pre-schedule podcast and or booktube recordings with friends. Get on calls. Have them there in person. Talk to them of do you want to record with me? Whether it's we're talking about books or you're coming on the podcast or I'm having some of them film with me, all these things, right? Maybe we film a vlog, etc., right? Or we film a couple of short pieces of content, etc. I thought about it'd be really cool to do that. I've never done that. And if I were to take vacation, that's what I would want to spend my vacation on. Not necessarily traveling somewhere new. And I can and I will, and we have plans to do that, but that's what I want to do for myself. But it's already mid-May. when you're seeing this as the end of May, I have not thought about it, or I have not put anything into action, and I've lost basically the timing that I have to do that now. So I have to now rethink the plan, quote unquote think. Honestly, if I just tell people, hey, this date, are you free? Let's link up. And then I just have to make sure that I'm there when we need to link up. I'm going to book the Airbnb, book the flight, make sure I'm there, set everything up, less record, less talk. You know, that'd be great. But I thought about it too much, didn't put anything into action, and other things like came up. I mean, these things are a priority. I legitimately could not logistically make it work without, you know, without messing some things up. So I kind of had to put that idea on a back burner. But I mean, the idea was there, and if I had scheduled it a little bit closer, it would have been better. But you know, that's the nature of things. But I did fall into the rumination trap, and I'm still in the rumination trap. I think way too much, and I literally, that's just who I am. I think way too much, and I think that by thinking I'm making progress, and I fall into this trap of low agency where I don't do anything. Like yesterday compared to today. Yesterday was such a much better day. Today, less of a good day. Still an okay day. Tomorrow, I just hope that it's an okay day. And by saying that, I feel like I already fell into one of the traps of like, I can make it a good day if I just get out of bed, go brush my teeth, go take the laundry out, go take the trash out, stay moving, put on a podcast, don't put on my gaming videos, don't sit down to read, stay standing, put my socks on, let's go for a walk. Let's walk, let's get some fresh air, let's get some activity, let's get some movement, let's wake up the fucking brain. Because I had a migraine today because I woke up and started scrolling and reading. Not even reading, because I finished the book yesterday. I read 13 books in 13 days, guys. This was the like most aggressive book reading frenzy that I've been on in a very, very long time. Like, I don't think you understand. 13 books in 13 days. I would start a book one day and finish it within the next 24 to 30 hours. And then start on the next book quite literally immediately. Oh, it was so good. That series was so good. It was the Frith Chronicles by Shami Stovall, and then the Astra Academy series by Shami Stovall. Basically, the Frith Chronicles is like the beginning of this story world, etc. The Astra Academy is like generation 2 of this world. Really, really cool. It hit all the buttons, right? It had like an interesting, soft, sometimes hard magic system. It had like physical and non-physical magical elements. It was a seafaring, sailing, swashbuckling type of adventure. There were guilds, there were pirates. There was like some of the first couple of books were a bit episodic in their conflict and resolution. But by the third book, you then see this overarching, big, huge, like series conflict that's happening that the next 5 books kind of spend tackling. So they're less episodic and more just like mini conflict resolution, but the main issue is still trailing through all the books. Cast of characters, wonderful cast of characters. I really did enjoy the main character. He did really annoy me towards the latter half of the book because I'm like, you're so experienced. I get that you're new, but you're still so experienced. Stop biting your tongue. Tell people what's up. You're the fucking warlord of magic, for God's sake. You know, use your clout. Use your fucking clout. Stop being a little bitch. But in the next series after that, the main character is the type of the main character of like, he uses humor and sarcasm to not be alone, to like to mask whatever he's feeling inside, etc. And I was like, that's me. I don't usually self-insert, but that's me right there. That's me right there. That's me. That's me and my boy Gray. My boy Gray Lexley. So I really do enjoy these. I really did enjoy these series. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed them. Did I neglect a lot of things while reading? I did 100%. Did I um did I get yelled at by my wife? I did 100%. But was it worth it? It was 100%. So, uh that being said, if you're looking for a good fantasy series that checks all the boxes, world building, characters, cast, cast the same thing as characters, power system, character relationships, any sort of world political intrigue if you're into that. It's on the sea. It's very like traverse the world versus you're contained in like the same continent type thing. Pretty casual level of prose. It's not heavily fantasy out, like it's not like high fantasy prose. It's not like poetic. It's not purpley. It's very casual, which I appreciate because it's easier for me to get through, which is why I was so addicted to it. It was so easy to read. It wasn't the most layered, but it was really good. I'm literally giving you the book review that I honestly fuck making a separate book review. I might just clip this out and make this like my video book review because I think I said basically everything that I wanted to say without like, spoilers. That's basically everything I wanted to say. Bro. Well, I guess there's other things I wanted to say. So this will be another teaser review, I guess. Anyways, you get what I'm saying, right? Great series. I have to read this one next, and I tried reading 2 pages of it, and my brain could not get through it. My brain could not get through it. It was crazy, bro. I could not get through it. My brain could not get through it. It was insane. I will have to like sit. Like I knew I was gonna need 110% of my brain to read through this, and I'm genuinely like, yeah, it's taking 110% of my brain, which I don't have 110% of my brain to give to read this book. It's crazy. But anyways, that was my book side tangent. Let's get back to low agency. There was another thing that I thought of when listening to this, right? And I just like vomited all my thoughts, like speech to text. So basically, I said there's a potential trap with low agency, or with the low agency, high agency concept framework. And the fact is that it's a framework, and I really do want to call people into avoiding saying I want more agency, I want less agency. You know how people say like I want more productivity, I want less productivity, or like I'm a productivity bro, well I'm an agency bro. I want to caution people from just assuming or using agency as like a new noun to replace productivity, self-improvement, whatever it is, right? Don't fall into the trap because you're low agency and you're going to be low agency again. Instead, you should be doing this. How much of life is happening to me? What are the things out of my control? What are the things that are in my control? Of the things that are in my control, how many of them am I actually controlling? Do I have agency in things not in like general? Because you're always going to be chasing that figurative happiness. That was a bit of a word vomit. Basically, I was saying that like, instead of saying I want to be more productive and less productive, you say, how can I spend less time doing this? How can I spend more time doing this? How can I improve the quality of my time spent doing this versus having lower quality when I end up doing that? Same with agency, with the questions I said, right? Instead of saying I wish I had more agency, it's the same way of saying I wish I was happier. Happiness is in your control. Happiness is a mental concept. Happiness is a social construct. Not really, but happiness is quite literally like a mental concept. You can make yourself happy. Here are the things that are making me unhappy. Are any of these things within your control to change? Are any of these making you unhappy because they're not meeting your expectations? If you lower your expectations, the less things don't meet them, more things meet your expectations. Oh, look, I'm a happier person because more things are falling within my expectations. Very simple. All you got to do is change up how you think, right? So I just don't want people to fall into the trap of I want more agency. I wish I had more agency. You don't ask, I wish I had more agency. How do I gain more agency? How do I become more agent? Well, if you ask yourself how do I become more agent, you're obviously an idiot like me. So instead, ask yourself the questions we talked about previously. There's a couple of like agency values that they talked about, right? One of them is there's no unsolvable problem as long as like assuming it's within the laws of physics. And so George Mack was essentially saying that like as long as it doesn't defy the laws of physics, every single problem is solvable. Every single problem is solvable as long as it doesn't defy the laws of physics. You know, my wife had told me today, she's like, I really got to start working out. I was like, okay, then go work out. Like it's literally that simple. It's not a huge thing of like, oh, I have to like working out means like changing my clothes, getting to my car, filling up my water bottle, going to the gym, getting a workout in, driving back, showering, etc. Getting a workout in basically means let me go hit like 10 squats and a wall sit real quick. Let's just start there because she doesn't work out. Let me just start there. I have these resistance bands at home. Can we do some like shoulder presses? I have these dumbbells at home. Can we do a little bit of curls, a little bit of extensions? Let me mobilize a little bit. I say a lot. I say a lot like I need to add mobility back into my routine. But the thing is that I assume that I can't do that like naturally. No, I can. I could stand while I work, do some like high knees, stretch out my hips, etc., move my hips, like squat every couple of minutes and then get back up and keep working. I don't have to stand still while I'm working and standing. I can do other things, right? Same with my arms, like reaching up overhead like this and stretching out your arms when you're sitting a lot. Like you can, all these things you can do and you have within your agency to do. It's not an unsolvable problem. It's not like, oh my God, I'm so far gone, I can never be mobile again. I can never eat healthy again. I can never save money again. I can never make more money again. I can never be happy again. You know, like all these are solvable problems, literally. So there are no unsolvable problems as long as they don't defy the laws of physics. And then the next thing is that there are no adults. This was an interesting one. He was basically saying that you know, as a kid, you're always reprimanded by the adult. Who's the adult in the room? Who's the person with the most authority in the room? But people with high agency don't really think about that. It's not about who has the most authority in the room. It's what do you want to do? Who do you want to talk to? Who do you want to listen to, maybe? Who do you think has any say in what you do? There are no adults in this room. We're all the same. We are all the same. We are all adults. Therefore, none of us are the adult in this room. You don't have to listen to what the adult says. Do what you want to do. As long as it's, you know, fine. But do what you want to do as long as you don't get, you know, as long as you don't break any laws. Do whatever you want to do. Not the laws of physics, but like, you know, the laws of society. Well, the laws of like, you know, the political, like the law system. Do whatever you want to do. You know what I mean? There's another one where that says another value of agency is like there's no guarantee you won't die screaming. And so this was a story that George Mack told. Basically, there was this man who came on a podcast and talked about his father. So the father was a very good man. He went to work, he did his job, he came home, he spent time with his family, he provided for his family, etc. Right? He was always genial, never had an outburst, never really did too many things outside of like his job and whatever tasks that he had to do, whatever responsibilities he had, etc. Right? And one day he passed away. So the man gets to the hospital. The man's brother says, or you know, the father has passed away, and the brother tells the man 3 words that stick with him for the rest of his life. He says, he died screaming. And apparently the father, as he was passing away, started screaming. You can take that to mean whatever you may, but they had used this to illustrate the concept of he was a good man who did what he who did what he was supposed to do. He didn't really do everything that he may have wanted to do, but he never like alluded to wanting to do other things out loud. He probably just thought inside like I just need to go to work, provide for my family, and I'll be happy. And he died screaming. I generally think if you're screaming, you're unhappy, but you know, others might think differently. But there's no guarantee that you won't die screaming. So you might as well do things right now that make you happy, that you want to do, and hopefully you don't die screaming. Hopefully when you die with a smile on your face. Hopefully. And then the last one is be abnormal, which goes back to that education concept thing, which goes back to like non-conforming, be abnormal. In school, you're taught to fit in and be like everybody else. But in society, it's the people who are abnormal who get the attention. And right now, once again, attention is money, attention is authority, attention is power. So be abnormal. Don't be like everybody else. You're not like everybody else. You're you. And you're not like me. And I'm not like you. But you're you and I'm me. And I almost started doing the Rush Hour 3 scene with Chris Tucker. So we're not going to do that right now. There was, they talked about the concept of inverse charisma, which I really love. And this is what I try to evoke through my podcasts and when I talk to people. Because for a long time, I thought in order to be the most interesting person in the room, I had to have so many things about me that are interesting. That's why I started doing so many things. I was like, if I'm doing so many things, I have so many things about me. I'm a multifaceted person. That means I'm an interesting person. You can be boring and you can be a multifaceted piece of stone. You can literally be a multifaceted rock sitting on the lawn. No one's looking at you. No one cares about you. But there's Chris always talks about this concept of inverse charisma, where it's basically the most interesting person in the room is a person who makes other people feel like they're the most interesting person in the room. There's two stories that went along with this, right? The first story is back in maybe the 1900s when there were two people up for the presidency. I forget if it was like Roosevelt's wife or which woman it was, right? But there was a woman who had dinner with two of the presidential candidates. One of them was, I guess, Truman. Then one of them was something else. I'm just regurgitating what I heard from Chris. And after those two dinners, people asked the woman, "How did they go? Or what did you think about them?" And the woman said, "One man was the most interesting man I've ever met. The other man, one man was the most interesting person that I've ever met. But the other man made me feel like I was the most interesting person they've ever met." And it's so fun to think about, like the person who is intrigued in your life is the person you remember. Oh, like they asked me all these questions and they were such an interesting person. They asked me all these different questions and we were talking a lot and it was a really good conversation. And you think back and think, do I know their name? No. Do I know their age? No. Do I know where they live? No. Do I know where they work? No. Or do I know what they do? No. Do I know any of their hobbies? No. How much of it was us talking together and how much of it was just me answering questions and talking about myself? And you think, oh, that was such an interesting conversation. Right? But I love that because, to be honest, I'm not the most charismatic person when it comes to being in a crowd. I'm not. I'm very soft-spoken. I don't know what questions to ask. I don't know how to respond to things. I have very curt, concise responses. I don't know when to go deeper into certain answers. I don't know when to cut answers off if they're going too long. I don't know any of these like social conventions, right? And so I spend all of my time thinking about like, what questions can I ask this person? But then I fall into one of the rumination traps of, is this question too personal? Is this question too weird? Is this question too inappropriate? Is this question like not the right one to ask at this time, etc. Right? I fall into those traps a little bit, but I do very much try to still be in that position of asking the question, less talking about me and more having somebody else talk about themselves. I think that's just where my skills lie. I do talk about myself a lot when people ask, and I'm not afraid to provide additional detail where I think additional detail is needed. But I found myself very like leaning towards that concept of if I want to be charismatic, it is not by being charismatic. It is by taking interest in other people and asking them questions about their lives and who they are, and less about who I am and what I do in my life, etc. But I always like that concept. I always do like that concept. And I'll leave you with this one. This was another word vomit that I had at the end of the podcast. And this might just be me like overthinking this concept, but I really think strongly about like back in time questions like this. So George had said, the reason why he wrote this essay is because he was so intrigued by the concept and understanding it and researching and everything. And he made the statement, I wish this was something that I had read at 13 as opposed to something that I'd written at 30. And I find those claims, those statements so interesting sometimes. I wish I had this, like I made what I wish I had when I was younger. And I always like question that. Because when I was 13, I was not the same person that I am now in any way. And it does go back to depending on were you the same person you were back then, or are you drastically different? I'm a drastically different person than I was in my youth, in my juvenile days. 13-year-old Arish would have never read this essay, would never have been intrigued by any of this because he was low agency as fuck. He was in the system. The only like abnormal things he would do is he would like dance in his room with his iPod, play video games when his parents weren't looking, and stay up at night and watch anime on his phone after everybody had gone to bed. That was it. Everything else, I was supposed to study. I did my extracurriculars. I was really bad at sports. I was pretty good at grades. I got my 4.0. I applied to college. I only applied to 2 colleges. I got rejected by one. I got accepted by the other. And I'm here now. That's it. But I can't say I'm making the book videos now that I would have wanted back then. I can't say I'm making the podcast now that I would have wanted back then. I cannot say that I'm wearing the clothing now that I would have wanted back then. So I just find those claims really interesting. Like, are you actually sure that past you would have wanted what current you was doing? And I just always think about that. I also, whenever people ask if you could go back in time and change anything, what would you change? And I very carefully say I would change nothing because my life right now is so good that I'm afraid that anything that I change in the past would make it to where my life is not as good right now. But if I knew which events were canon and which ones were not, I would know exactly which ones I want to change. Because there's quite a few cringy things that I've done in the past that I don't think are canon events that I think I would definitely like tackle myself and drag them into the bush and not do those things. And we will not get into those. My cringy youth moments are for me and whichever people were around me at those cringy times. If you were ever around me as a youth and I was doing cringy things, either towards you, if you were involved in the scenario, etc., there are a couple that come to mind, and I always think about them and I cringe as fuck. I want to sincerely apologize to you for who I was back then and let you know that I'm not the same person now. That shit will never happen again. I really, really hope. So that is High Agency, the High Agency essay by George Mack. I really love it. I really love George Mack's like thinking process. Like his thoughts and his ruminations are really interesting. And this is why I fucking love podcasts, because I wouldn't have had any of these additional insights into this like agency concept if I had not read it, if I had not listened to the podcast. Because reading it didn't evoke a lot of these thoughts in me that the podcast did. Because as soon as they ask one question, my mind opens up to ask the other 5. But it's like the door is so locked sometimes that the podcast is what unlocks it. It's the questions they ask what unlocks it. So that was really, really interesting for me to listen to. I would highly recommend you guys listen to it. I would highly recommend you guys listen to it. It was so thought provoking. And I mean, I didn't come out of it thinking that I need more agency in life at all. It was just, you know, interesting to listen to. It was engaging my brain. It was opening up thoughts that I liked ruminating on, and that's it. And I think this was a great initial podcast coming off my cleanse. So I hope you guys did enjoy that little talk session. Anything that I talked about today is literally on highagency.com. I will link it for you guys down below because I do think if you guys are interested in it, I want you to find it as quickly as you can. I don't think George Mack will ever listen to this, but if he ever listens to this, I want to talk to him one day on my podcast, and I'm going to make sure that it's good enough for him to come on the podcast and for us to have a talk session about that, because that shit is interesting. Because I would love to talk to him about ego variance. That's what I'm working on right now is ego variance. Am I working on? I mean, I think about it every couple of weeks and don't actually do anything on it. Low agency as fuck. I know. Oh, by the way, guys, I got henna done. I got some mehndi done. When I was traveling over this weekend. Isn't this so cool? I love it so much. It's so cool. Just only the thumb and the thumb palm meet, and then this circle is like just matching what the circle is on my wife's hand. But anyways, these are fading now. But the color was much darker and richer when I first had it done. But yeah. Anyways, I'm trying to end this fucking podcast. Thank you guys for listening to the episode today. I hope you guys did enjoy it. If you are new here, consider subscribing. If you're listening on Spotify, consider leaving a review, rating it. If you're on YouTube, please leave a like, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about any of these things. Let me know what your thoughts are in response to any of these things. If you have a response to put, I know sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just listen. But if you have a thought or response, let me know. And if there's any like articles or essays or like concepts that you guys are intrigued in that you want me to talk about, 100% let me know. We will go deep into those. I promise you. That being said, I'll catch you guys later. Have a great rest of your day. When you're listening to this, have a great rest of your life. Keep thinking, keep working towards your end goal, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.